Welcome back to We Move Through Stormy Weather, a Phish podcast where we compare and contrast songs and the evolution of their jamming styles throughout the band's career. My name is Ryan Storm, and today I am joined by Jon Lombardi. Stage and road manager, lighting tech, and Goose co-founder, Coach, as he is known in the music world, has been deeply invested in the scene for the past 2 decades. Since his first tab show at Radio City Music Hall in 2002, Jon's dedication to music has allowed him to see hundreds of shows with Phish, Panic, and several Grateful Dead iterations at the top of the list. He can occasionally be seen sitting in with Goose on Rainstick. Coach, say hi.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How we doing? What's up, Ryan?
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to be able to sit down and talk Phish with you and meet you. I'm such a fan.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I mean, so many of us are fans. That's why we're here doing this. And you kind of got me to dive back into a phenomenal part of my life. So I appreciate that.
Yes, and this episode we'll be discussing the Jam Titan Ghost. You have picked the legendary It Festival version, and I picked the Alpharetta 2018 version. Why don't you talk a little bit about? I know you have a lot to say about the It Festival. Thank you.
It's funny, our versions, I just realized, 15 years apart, both, I think, August 3rd, just
Yeah.
03 and 18. I mean, there's quite a bit to say. I mean, it was a very special time, and especially for me and what ended up happening later in my life. It was definitely like a huge pivot point for me. I think without it, um, without me having gone to it and the shows I did before that and whatnot, I don't think there'd be a Goose. Like, I wouldn't have gotten so into this these boys from Vermont up here that are the best band out there ever. But before even it, I mean, 2.0 as a whole was a very awesome era, especially the 2003 part of 2.0. I feel like it's not talked about as much, and it's just one of these quintessential moments in Phish's history. And unlike other bands, Phish has so many, unique, different moments from, that 91, you get the 88 Roma stuff, you got, and that type of rudimental Phish and the really good, awesome stuff, and them growing from like the 91 stuff. You got 93 Phish, them hopping into the Garden 95. You got 97 where they destroy America. 98's kind of the Funktastic Fest, 99, 2000, they did their thing. And 2.0, it's a very, I thought it was a really cool period in Phish times, and it was a very interesting time for me to get into it, to have it all go away. But yeah,
When was your first show?
my first show, the boys, was 2/28/03 at Nassau Coliseum.
Oh,
It was absolute gem of a show.
what a show to be your first.
Yeah, it was really.
Did you know? What was it like? I'm assuming you didn't know the story behind the Destiny Unbound bust out at the time, but what was it like being in the building and watch everyone lose their shit and not really know?
Oh man, so it's really funny you say that. So I'm just sitting there, uh, I'm 15, sitting there, and I'm real stoked. Birds of a Feather was an awesome opener. We're on the floor, actually, like 50 rows back for that first set. And then all of a sudden, I hear the opening notes to Destiny, and you see grown men, hugging each other, people kissing each other, people jumping up and down, people crying. And I was like, yo, what's going on? To my buddy Adam Grossman. And so I was like, yo, man, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. And I later asked my other friend Eric Skiba, and he was like, they haven't played that in like hundreds and hundreds of shows. And I was like,
That's
oh man,
crazy.
But it took me until 3.0, and having seen songs that I was chasing, like, seeing a Fuck Your Face for the first time in what I think was Charlotte in 2010, being like, wow, that hadn't been played for so long, or really like up until the Baker's Dozen, when like I the only song I really had left to chase and wanted to see was Isabella, and just didn't think it would happen at all. And it's just a great feeling, and I always at those moments flash back to a young Jon sitting in Nassau Coliseum watching all these guys cry or women
That's awesome.
and everybody embracing. So at the time, no, I had no idea. I was like, "What's going on?" All right.
So what was your first impression of that tweezer?
Oh man, that tweezer that night was unbelievable. It was at that point I was we'd left the floor for that set and one met up with a bunch of my buddies and especially my two friends Eric and Brian Skiba who got me into Phish. Some of the people and Ian Harleman and it was great to be around him. And I was like, I remember when it drifted Type Two, and at that point, not necessarily knowing what Type Two was, but I was like, wow, they're just completely in a whole nother structure and doing a whole nother thing right now, and I love it. And my buddy Eric was like, "That's the point, man," and
That's
it
awesome.
was awesome. That was
Yeah.
great.
So my first show, I didn't have a crazy bust out or crazy long jam. My first show was Blossom 2012, June 24th, and I was 11 and a half at the time.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, so yeah.
How do you have like fond memories being that young at the show?
Oh yeah, it was phenomenal. So my dad got me into the band when I was really young. Like it was after he went to Super Bowl
That was a
in
great time.
2011 and the Super Bowl Reba. First time I heard that, I was like, "What is this band? I love it."
That was a great Reba.
Yeah, and I was listening to growing up. I listened to like the Dead. Like when I was 5 years old, when I was going to day camp, they were like, "Bring your favorite CD, and we'll play it on the bus." So kids are bringing like Kids Pop, whatever. I brought the Europe '72 box set.
The most Ted 5-year-old out there, just like,
Yeah.
yeah, what's up, everybody? You got to listen to this.
So the China Rider, like
The Stella Blues. Let me tell you, dude, it's really.
yeah, so I seeing Phish at 11 and a half was crazy, and that was also a show where there was like crazy meat stick shenanigans where they brought like 10 people on stage to do the dance, and it was teased throughout the show, and it was just like I just remember it was such a crazy night, and I loved it.
Oh,
I
I'm
loved it.
I'm sure that's great. It's cool to hear perspectives of someone that saw it young, and it
Yeah.
really stuck. That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
that the year before in '02 when I saw Trey at the at Radio City, I'll never forget the whole show. But like really at the end, I think it was a live alive again was the encore, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken, and they had passed out like a bunch of like maracas and tambourines and like all these people including the band like walked out of Radio City while playing at the end, and it was just pretty iconic. And like
that's awesome.
I was like, who is this guy on guitar? Like I gotta get going to this stuff,
I gotta go join his cult.
Yeah, I mean, where we grew up, everybody was kind of into the Dead and Fish, and so I'd gotten, started getting tapes and stuff in like sixth grade and stuff like that, and trading CDs, and people are all up on Napster and burning stuff, and
Hmm.
most of these kids' dads have like box sets, so they're just ripping them onto CDs back in the CD days, and boom, you all of a sudden listen, submerged into it. So it was cool going from just listening to it to actually experiencing the shows and feeling like what it was like to be there live, really see Kuroda's lights on you live, um,
Yeah.
and just feel the community aspect of it, which is something you don't really get, and especially pre-internet days, or internet was around, but pre like every second on your phone internet days, where now everybody can express their feelings instantaneously, almost, not almost, definitely, and back then, you walk in and there's a sick jam, and '03, you're like, wow, this is pretty freaking awesome, or
Hmm.
2001 or something, this is awesome. You're not just like sharing it with everybody because you didn't really have the capability to. So it's like if you knew, you knew, and it felt really special. It was cool. It was something I was always entrenched in, but I didn't go. I didn't go full on in until I did the road leading up to it, um, into the It Festival, which was phenomenal shows.
Yeah, some of those July '03 shows are great.
Yeah, the and especially the Pittsburgh one, the 729 or whatever it was. It's Yeah, it's a Pittsburgh show, Burgettstown Pavilion, and then they go to Camden for 2 nights, and then when I really was like, wow, I mean, it said whatever it was in attendance on paper, but there's another 20,000 that'll walk through, and it feel basically about 90,000 people just for one band for four guys, and
Yeah, just crazy.
I finally got this sense. I was like, this is incredible. This is
Yeah,
something that I always want to be involved in. I'll never forget turning to my buddy and being like, I always want to be seeing these guys and getting this feeling, So
yeah.
it was
There's
awesome.
nothing on earth like a Phish concert, that's for sure.
There's nothing on earth like a Phish concert ever. And I always say this too: there is no bigger party, and you could quote me on this, and everybody on the internet can. There's no bigger party than a Yem party. It's just fact.
Yes.
When he's throwing down, it's like
I mean,
you're linked in with the whole crowd to that.
yeah,
Boy,
that and Tweezer.
oh, absolutely, and especially the Tweet Prize. But I feel like everybody, even if it's your first show, they just feel inclined to like do a lot of dancing, a lot of involuntary
Absolutely.
body movements going on during that. People are like, "What's going on? I didn't even know the
I
dances
have a
play."
thing with Yem. Whenever I am with one of my friends who doesn't like Phish, or just someone who has never heard the song before, right before they get to the lyrics, I'm like, "Okay, I will pay you $10 right now if you can tell me what they're saying." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then they sing the first "Wash your face and drop it to fire." They're like, "What?" I have never lost that bet, which is pretty
It's a
funny.
good bet to
But
have. It's a good bet to
so
have.
talk to me about the It Festival. What was it like 6 months after your first show, and having seen a bunch more, uh, you know, the week before or whatever? What was it like walking into this festival?
I mean, first walking in, it was a moment because I believe after Camden, and thank God we didn't head back to CT. We went right up. Um, it was like 18 hours of traffic or something,
Ooh,
and funny about that is at the end of it, Trey was like, next year, it too, traffic free entrance. And we know how the next year turned out. So,
oh yeah,
but finally, and the traffic line was phenomenal. It was kind of one of the things that made it. I mean, talking to people, getting stoked for it, listening to the bunny, hearing stories of, meeting people freaking longboarding up and down. They're like, we did 94 tour. We're from out west. It was really cool. But walking in, I'll never forget the gate. It's like,
our intent is all for your delight.
yeah, our intent is your delight, just overhead. And we walked through it, and I was like, man, this is pretty special. And the vibe was awesome. We just so happened to where we parked. I was like, look at that tower. What do you think? That was like an old like a landing tower for this base or something. My buddy was like, duh. And we start
I
setting up.
wonder what it could be.
Yeah, but at the end of the first night, it ended up being really cool because of that. I was like, what are they doing over there? You guys see some lights setting up, and I was just on my buddy Eric's Pathfinder, rip of tubes, watching the stuff unfold, and I was like,
That's
I'm
awesome.
not a vet. I wasn't a vet. I didn't know. I knew the tunes and stuff, but I just didn't know. It was like seeing the circus for the first time right in front of my face. It was pretty awesome.
That's
So
awesome.
that was
So
it festival. So going into day two, when that ghost happened, I mean, I was on beyond cloud nine in terms of just like,
I mean, and you already had that crazy chalk dust in the first set.
oh yeah, it was the first set was phenomenal too. It was pretty loaded with stuff, and the chalk dust was like extra fast at the end. It was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That Wilson Trey like forgot a little part, but they also played it fast, and he claimed it. He was like, "That's the shortest Wilson ever in history."
That's awesome.
I remember he was like, "We're gonna play the biggest bittersweet motel in history ever," and people were like booing. I was like, "I'm down with that," but. Bring it, and then they ended that set with a proper Mike's Groove,
Awesome.
and it was cool. But I mean, the way that second set started with that Marley cover, "Mellow Mood" is probably one of my favorite covers they do.
And I love when they like open the second set with kind of like an innocuous, like kind of slow cover, and then they launch into like some crazy jam, like the Baker's Dozen on Double Chocolate Night, like they did with opening the second set with Have Mercy, and then tearing into a Chalk Dust, which is that Baker's Dozen Chalk Dust is my favorite Phish jam of all time.
Is it? That's good to know. That is one of up there with mine as well. Funny fact, that was my senior yearbook quote. My mom was like, "What does this mean? You know, what does this mean?" But yeah, that chalk dust is.
Mine was my yearbook quote at the end of high school was uh, been waiting for the time when I can finally say this has all been wonderful, but now I'm on my way.
Oh, it's a classic one too. Yeah, they hook
Yeah.
us in, man. They get lifelong fans. But going back to your first point, after we digressed, I mean those ebbs and flows, that graph like pattern where they're able to do that in shows where
Yeah.
in the music industry there's a lot of bands that can only start, either they call it, start at the bottom of the chairlift and working your way up in terms of energy. And some bands have a hard time starting up top with high energy. Some bands have trouble going back, regressing, going back and forth. And so it's just really, it's really cool what Phish is able to do,
Hmm.
having this copacetic vibe between the four of them, this unspoken thing where they can just jam the way they need to and have it go up and down and all make sense. Sometimes you get the most intense thing and you kind of, when you get you know a night nurse or something slow like that, it hits perfectly,
Yeah.
because you need it. And then all of a sudden you'll get a Carini and you feel like you can put a football helmet on and go run the wishbone.
Run through a wall. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. You get that with stuff like, a life buoy in the middle of Mike's Groove.
Oh, that's
Or
beautiful. I think that was Miami, either '09 or the 14-15
they've
run in
done that a
Miami.
whole bunch of times.
That I love
I think.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
But so let's start talking about this ghost. One thing that stuck out to me about the It Ghost that you picked is the first 15 minutes or so, or really reminded me a lot of the Denver '97 Ghost. Similar kind of jamming, like high intensity Trey soloing over the backbone of Fishman's Groove. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, in that first 15 minutes, that's definitely happening. Even in the first really 18 minutes up to that.
yeah,
In addition, though, to start from the beginning, I mean, let's just, they were patient, slow.
very,
I
yeah,
mean, very slow, patient, which leads to a big pocket, and that slowness and that is just was this confidence that kind of they had, and definitely Trey and the boys had, and it was slow and it built up well, and it wasn't like anybody shined over anyone, especially in those first 18 minutes. They were all kind of in it at the same pace, all bringing something to it, which was a
yeah.
big thing in a theme in 2.0, in my opinion.
I really like the way it starts off as well, like just Fishman's drum beat, and the other three guys just gradually kind of join in as they start the song.
Real
That was cool
gradual.
to
It
me.
is real cool, yeah. And they keep that theme going throughout probably the first 8 minutes, but even through their jamming while he's ripping it builds. Basically the way I look at this ghost in a macro level is together these guys symbiotically, work to brick by brick build up this ghost jam all the way to this 19-minute mark where you can really start to see the jam go take off, and it's very complete type two way that is without a doubt type two. I see people on the internet bickering over whether one thing was type two, one thing wasn't.
Yeah, this
Right.
absolutely is. It's and
Absolutely is, and then they start to deconstruct it brick by brick, one by one, until they rebuild it up, and then at the end, let it go gradually. So it's just that it has all the right spots, and at points it gets ominous. It's dark.
very well. There's the hole in the back half of the jam. Trey's angry guitar loops,
Oh,
which
I
are just
love
there
those.
for like 10 minutes.
God, I
See
loved Angry
that's where
Trey. I loved
we
it.
disagree.
Really?
I'm really not as much of a fan as of the back half of this ghost. as some people are. I mean,
I get you, and it happens. Different errors, getting used to when you got into them, or probably there was different styles of play. Like 3.0 is a different style of play, as with the Ghost jam that you picked, and other jams in 3.0, which are phenomenal. But they kind of only take maybe a few minutes, really 8 minutes until they go in that type 2 direction in the one you chose, as opposed to going a lot longer. So it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I mean, it's really awesome. I do like the back half probably more than anything on it, just because of, especially like 19 minutes through the end, 20 minutes through the end. They start building something around 20. It's like, let me see what I have
well,
over here too.
to me, my issue, or I guess missing the word here, but my main thing about the back half of the jam is, um, after like the first space out, at around like 21, 22 minutes, Trey does something to his tone that takes it from the usual like thick 2.0 tone, which I actually like, to like kind of like scratchy, and to me it just didn't sound very good, like kind of like sandpapery, towards the end of the
I
jam.
could see. Okay, so now I know exactly what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
so I could see that. And one thing to point to that is, he was taking chances, and they all aren't afraid to take chances, but it's something with Trey that you see less of. And I mean, they had to build back up to it from '09 into, shoot, I remember Portland 2010 in the fall. I call that the Stella got her groove back show, because during that Undermined, you could tell they got comfortable and they started taking chances, because the way this type of music where we get these awesome jams is some chances are taken. So yeah, that tone definitely sounds dissonant, but it's kind of meant to have that, like, affect Latin type of like angry, you know, noise. And I think that guitar tone led to that. And I can understand why it doesn't fit with you, but maybe give it a couple more listens, and you never know. You're in the right frame of mind, it might really click with you.
It's true. It's true. You do never know. I do like. I mean, in the background, I also think he could have let the loops go a little bit earlier, because I found, you know, at some point they just kind of receded to the background, and they were kind of like an angry buzzing that was just detracting from me, like trying to listen to, what the other guys were doing.
Right, right. And there's a lot of looping going on in that from 2000 to
Yes.
2004, especially. It got kind of weird in four, but it was able to work at points. But it's funny though, we are polar opposites. I actually love having that there work, and having to work around it to hear the other,
Hmm.
guys. Even though that's happening and it may feel like he's putting himself apart, I really feel they're all working together symbiotically, and making that kind of spooky and a little scary, taking people out on a trip in the middle of Maine, in where Limestone, Maine, out in Lauren Air Force Base. You kind of got to have those jams where, you kind of go out to space for a second and get a little evil before you come back. For me, those have made for the most memorable type of excuse me, type 2 jams, where I'm like, wow, where are we for a second? Or I
Yeah.
believe people use now the term, is this still a lawn boy? But
Yes.
so it's cool that this is the beautiful thing about this music, is we could talk for hours about stuff that we even have different opinions on, but it's so
Exactly.
awesome.
Exactly. I also liked, listening for similarities between, the two versions, and kind of, the way they approach quote unquote evil jamming in the 2018 versus, '03. And it's very different because, I mean,
Yes.
not only do they have, different gear, but, it's 15 years later. Trey's not on Oxy anymore.
It's
And
that's I wasn't sure whether to bring that up or not, but yeah, that's exactly it.
it's a huge
And
part of it.
the
Yeah.
gear, he's not on oxy, so he's not. Yeah, he's not oxy jamming, and he's not. We're not getting those loopers. Not to say that in '03 it wasn't working, and I don't condone and actually hate all that stuff, and it's the worst thing ever, and taking so many good people, but in '03 for him, a lot of times those chances he would take that you pointed out that you didn't like that one example would normally pay off to work. It just sounded a little more dissident
Right.
than normal in that jam. But to me, and I think to a lot of other fans, it definitely worked.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, looking at one thing that sticks out to me in the Alpharetta 2018 version is, I mean, Page.
Oh,
I
the
think he,
hero.
especially since the late '90s, and especially in the last few years with the addition of the synths that he's been using, is absolutely crazy. He has been stepping way more out to the forefront
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I couldn't
in a
agree
lot of
more
jams.
in the latter half of 3.0. Last few years I haven't been able to catch much shows because of work and with Goose and whatnot. But
Hmm. But you get to go on
before
Goose
that,
tour, which is still pretty
I mean,
awesome.
it's I couldn't ask for a better job in the world. Hanging out with my best friends and putting out music is phenomenal, and just
Mm.
to make people smile, which is great. But I learned that from the four boys from Vermont, the the best band ever, and like just to hear what they were doing is it was huge. But
Yeah.
going back to that original point, before I stopped seeing a bunch of shows when I was still seeing them, it was just the theme was just Page in his great shirts, freaking making awesome jams. I'm like, look at him, he's in another little button down doing his thing up there. We love Page's new shirt. It's so nice.
Yes. Yes.
But he really has been a late 3.0, just crushing it on
It's
these jams.
it,
And
and
I
it's
noticed it.
these
I think
synths, man.
it's the sense, and he's taking some risk, and he's pushing the guys to do stuff, which I absolutely like. I can tell Mike is a big fan of, and they all are. I
Absolutely.
really like the. I have that the 12 to 18 minute mark of this jam, roughly over there. There's like a real spicy 6 minutes of it, and it's all really like Page inspired and pushed
Hmm.
by him, and I feel like other people get their ideas from him.
Yeah, you're talking about what after Trey like brute forces the jam into the minor key and does that like jagged. I described it as kind of vamp as Page starts. I think that's when Page really starts to take the lead on the jams and I think
Yes.
you really see Trey started stepping back more and letting them lead in 3.0, and you can see when he starts playing rhythm and Page really comes out to the front and starts leading on whatever instrument in his rig he's playing, and it's awesome.
It's awesome. That was a great example of it. And I mean, yeah, you let him sit back. And before that, Mark, too, like, I think it was 8 minutes into the song for me. I think I have here, I
Hmm.
noticed them like getting really blissful.
Yes.
It was a real blissful kind of moment, and they really carried that vibe into Page, getting funky, and then Trey kind of picking up on that and then throwing in a lot of freaking spice to that meatball. It's
Yeah,
real
and
cool.
and Page gets this really nice repeated like arpeggiating lick on the Wurlitzer in that early part of the jam.
Gotta love the whirly, dude. It's so cool, man. The
Yes,
sound it provides is phenomenal.
but I got my favorite in his rig has got to be the Rhodes though, especially with the phaser on it that he's had since 2018 or so, like the heavier phaser sound. It's just so good.
Yeah, I
And
love
at
a good
around
Rhodes. I mean, they sound good with anyone, but it's definitely I'd have to agree with you. It's my favorite Page
yeah,
vehicle as
my
well.
favorite is when he hits at around the 13-minute 40-second mark. Page hits the Rhodes, and it's got that the stereo effect going where it bounces from left to right in your headphones, and that just it feels like Page is just wrapping you in a warm blanket of electric piano.
Yeah, he is. He
I love
is.
it,
It's the best. He's the best. That's great.
especially as a keyboard player. It's just something that
Oh, you
always
rock
sticks out to
you
me.
rock the keys. That's awesome.
I do,
Are you in
indeed,
a
I
band?
do. It's my dad, my brother, and I. We're a Phish cover band. It's
Dude,
pretty
that
cool.
is awesome.
It
I
is.
love getting involved playing music, and getting involved with your family is just phenomenal. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's amazing. Yeah,
Did
my
you
brother's
guys
my
gig out
brother's
maybe?
13. So we've played. We have this annual, like, every June. There's uh this one neighborhood in Toronto does like an open tuning festival where they businesses and homes can host like a stage on their front lawn or in their back alley or something. And so one of my dad's friends who owns a business in the area has had us 2017, 2018, and 2019 to play. And those are our only three gigs. And then we did a number of live streams over the spring and summer.
Oh, dude,
We did
that's
a couple in
awesome.
our backyard, which were a
Are
lot of
these
fun over
online?
the
I'm
summer.
definitely gonna have to check
They
them
are.
out.
I
Oh,
will. I will let you know. And I mean, if you're listening and you don't know our band yet, we are Storm Free on social media with a PH.
yeah, go check out Storm Free and get involved with that. You know.
Oh yeah.
So you were saying your brother's 13 and he's
Yes,
rocking
he's
out?
13. He plays drums. He's been playing since he was like I think 3 or 4.
Wow,
He's
he's
just
like
had it.
Benny. He's like Spuds, 3 or 4.
Yeah,
He's on
he's
his
just
way,
had an
dude.
incredible sense of rhythm his whole life, and we got him like a. My parents got him a little uh, small drum kit for his I think 5th birthday. And then he upgraded to the full one. I think 3 years ago. But
That's
it's just
awesome.
yeah, we've got a music room in our house. My dad plays guitar.
And
We have fun.
you guys just need a cousin on bass or something.
Yeah, we got one of my dad's friends comes and plays bass with us for our gigs, which is good.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's awesome. It's awesome. But back to this Ghost. Um, One thing also, Mike's alien synth bass effect in the 2018 version.
Yeah.
He got that recently, I think in the last few years, but it's like that thing is crazy when when he turns it on.
Oh, you could tell. Yeah, it's
some
nutty.
some of the effects are more subtle when Trey or Mike turns it on, but that one it's like,
Boom.
oh.
Yeah, it's right in your face. It's
Yeah,
kind
like
of what
right at
makes it
the
cool.
15-minute mark or so, and that's when it like that really like makes the jam weird in this one.
And that's kind of what I love. I love getting weird. I love when they get weird. I mean, it's definitely my favorite part of Fish is the weirdness
Yeah.
of live Fish. And yeah, when he uses that effect, it just skyrockets it into weird. I love it.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's funny. My wife Bonnie pointed out we were just I had her listen to that version of the car, and she's like, "Oh, listen to Mike right here," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is where it gets going." You
Oh
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
And Mike throughout this whole jam is just killing it. Mike in 2.0 as well, so good, and that was like
Crushing,
some of the
crushing.
peak Fishman and Mike years, which I mean, I don't think they've ever had an off year.
No, I mean they without those guys, they're the heartbeat. They're the 2 and 4 of everything. But especially in 2.0, they were crushing, and it was why why Trey could get so far out there, and they could still keep stuff locked in. You know.
Yes. Well, there was in the It version, I want to say before uh like 22, 23 minutes, Fish starts like a very subtle beat
Yes,
out of like the space haze, and
just
as the
comes
rest of
out
the
of
band is still
nowhere.
going, and he's just starting like a it's awesome.
Just out of nowhere and just bringing it to a new direction. And that's that point where they start reconstructing block by block. You know,
Hmm.
this the jam again to give it some energy. Um, and it's really cool to get it back to like a rocking section eventually.
Yeah.
and that little drum beat is what starts it all, and then eventually they wind down. But it's really cool that that's it. He's the MVP. I mean, Paige is doing great, but my all-time MVP out of that group, and I love all the guys, but is Fishman. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just
That
wouldn't
is
be a
an
band without him.
indisputable fact.
Yeah, I remember taking Spuds, our drummer Benny Atkin, to his first Fish show, and him just watching what John does, with his hands and whatnot. And Ben's one of the best drummers in the world, but I mean, seeing John, he was just jawed. He was freaking jaw
Right.
on the ground, and I was like, "What do you think?" He was like, "Wow, man, this is incredible."
Yeah. One thing that I also love about Fishman's drumming is how he doesn't have to slam the drums, which I mean, it's not a knock to drummers who slam. Like, Spuds goes hard on the drums. Same with like Carter Beauford, like,
Yeah,
which
some
is, I
people
mean,
go hard, they
you can
lighten
see
up. It's different
his influence.
styles.
But I remember there was an interview with Stuart Copeland from a bunch of years ago, from when he went to see Phish, because he was in Oysterhead with Trey and whatever,
Absolutely.
and he said, like, he was in the audience and he was listening to Fishman drum, being like, man, like, this guy's crazy. And then he went side stage and he said, like, he's like, Fishman's barely tapping the drums. Like,
It
he was like,
looks
I don't know how to
effortlessly.
do that.
Yeah, it looks. He makes it look effortlessly. It's this dad botted guy in a dress,
Yeah,
looking, making it look effortlessly. But there's just an
he's
immense
an
amount of
octopus.
sounds coming out, and the offbeat. I mean, he can get so offbeat and still stay. He gets the craziest time signatures sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, Mound, for example, and things like that, and jams where he can do that.
Well,
It's
and
nuts.
in Hood, in that one section of Hood, the dun 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 dun
Yep, yeah,
dun
he like
dun
slows
dun,
it down.
and he's playing a completely different time signature from the rest of the band, and I can't even, like, when I'm listening to it, I have a hard time focusing on his time signature, let alone playing that on the drums.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
counting it
crazy.
off is it takes a bit, but it's really cool, and it's these little subtleties that make them the best band out there and ever because of what they can do.
Yeah.
That drives the improv, and that's one thing that I loved about 2.0, and especially listening to 1.0, but haven't seen 2.0 shows. I really loved the improv ability and the jamming in it. And it, not to say that doesn't happen in 3.0, and not to say, I mean, that's where I've seen the huge bulk of my shows, and they've been freaking phenomenal, super TED shows. But different jams, just like as I mentioned, the different eras. There's been different jamming, and it's
Yes.
just
Well, I
different
mean, you've
styles.
also unfortunately had to see them less the past few years, which, in my, like, those are my favorite years of the band. Like, fall 2018 is my favorite Phish tour.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Um,
it sounded great. Yeah,
and in terms of improv as well, you mentioned earlier you like how they take 15 minutes in the It Ghost to get to a Type 2 zone, and I'm such a fan of the way they can get to that
in
zone in
two or
4
three
minutes
minutes
now.
now. Yeah,
I remember Paige in the It documentary made a comment about how, sometimes their jams are so long because, it takes them 20-25 minutes to get to
that
the
point.
point. And,
Yeah.
and when they get to that point, it's like, okay. But now, like, they don't need that time, which is so cool because they can get to that point in just a few minutes.
Does it not feel forced a little bit sometimes when it's like that? Because like when I first put this version on last week, I remember being like they're getting to type two kind of pretty quick here, and it's not necessarily that it's forced. I just it just seems quicker. I'm definitely a fan of that patience, that slow build pocket, but it is still cool to get in that realm because then things get weird sooner,
Yeah, well, I
So,
mean, and I'm definitely in the minority of Fish fans here with my 3.0 centric
oh
opinion.
no, I would not say you're in the minority. I mean, there's a lot of awesome 3.0 Fish fans. I mean, a lot of half of my friends, I remember in 2003 and 4 being in high school hallways like, yo, let's go to Albany, yo, come up to Boston for the 20th anniversary or come to these shows. And people were like, nah, only a couple people did. And all those kids got way into it in 3.0. And there's been some excellent stuff. And although the last few years, due to working Goose, I haven't been able to catch as much. I always catch the garden shows because for me it takes me an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm in the parking garage at the good old parking lot right behind the garden, walking in with my crew. Roll with our buddy Bruce, who
So
works with Goose.
were you at all the Baker's Dozen shows?
Yeah, my friend Bruce and I did every single one.
Oh,
My wife did almost all of them with us, and I really, honestly, in 3.0, um, I've only missed one MSG show.
which one?
The 29th of this past run.
Ah, that was a great show. At least you didn't miss the 30th.
Oh no, I was at the 30th. That was our buddy Bruce's 100th show, and
Oh, and what a show for the 100th.
yeah, it was an incredible show, and we actually fortunately somebody had gotten a box, and it was a great viewing, and the band sounded so good. I mean, I just love seeing him at the Garden. It's
That's on
definitely
my bucket list.
the Garden is the spot. That's the hometown venue. I mean, I've seen them so many times there. I've just seen so many sporting events there. Just been in that building so much. It's iconic, and I feel
Yeah.
like they feel like it's home. And another place that I like just as much. I mean, I think is just as special, but indoor place to see him is the Bill Graham in San
In San
Francisco.
Francisco.
Oh, phenomenal! I mean, it's made for not sports for music, so it sounds so good everywhere you are. There's
Yeah.
not one bad place for sound. Not like there really is in the Garden either, especially the new Garden. I mean, it sounds good everywhere, even behind the stage. But yeah, classic places to see the band. They're probably
Yeah,
places I've seen
I'm
like 70 shows between the both of those places there. So it's a
as it
Fish.
stands right now, hopefully I will be at the Garden for next year's New Year's run.
Let's do it, dude.
Fingers crossed.
I'll be hanging out. Let's watch some Fish together at the
Well,
Garden.
hopefully I'll get to meet you at a Goose show before then.
Oh yeah,
That's
I'm
the
already assuming you're gonna meet me at a Goose show before that. I'm assuming like a Buffalo, or maybe we get up to
See,
Toronto.
yes. See, I'm upset because I knew of Goose in fall 2019, but I hadn't really, like I had watched part of the Peach Fest set at that point, I think. And I knew like Arcadia. And they weren't really on my radar, and I'm mad that they weren't because I would have been in Buffalo at that insane show that just got put out on vinyl.
Everything happens for a reason. Funny little thing with that show. Awesome, it's great. It's on vinyl. If you haven't gotten it, go out and check it out because it's flames. But I was in your homeland that night. I was not at the show.
You weren't?
Our great no, I had gotten married just a few weeks before, and it was kind of a fall of weddings for me. A great friend of mine had who lives in Toronto. Arlene got married that night, and
Oh,
my wife was in the wedding, and it kills me to sit out of a show, and I really haven't done it in a long time. But
they were like, oh, coach isn't gonna be here. Let's play a 4-song first set.
yeah, it's on fire. I remember getting texts from our buddy Jared that was helping out and doing some stuff that night, and he was asking me questions of what they're doing, and I was like listening to some stuff. I'm like, they're crushing right now. Oh my
Yeah.
god, this is a special show. And I asked Peter for the file like immediately and had to listen, and I was like, God, this was a great wedding, but man, my boys are crushed it last night.
Yeah. What really, like, when I really got into Goose, it was in February. I was on YouTube, and the Williamsburg hot tea video popped up in my recommended, and I was like, okay, I'll check this out. And then I watched it, and I was immediately in love.
It's that was a fun show. We
Yeah,
did two New
yeah.
York shows. They were really energetic, really fun. I think we debuted Nights in White Satin at one of those two shows, either the Bowery or Williamsburg.
That was Williamsburg, I believe.
We were real fortunate to have a really awesome year amidst all this, as Trey would say, in a world gone mad.
Yeah.
We were able to start the year off in Mexico, opening for the Dead, which is something that
Which is crazy.
unbelievable.
What was that for you as a lifelong Dead fan? I mean, I don't know
I
how they
mean,
reached out to you guys and asked, but
it's
what was
just
that like for you?
it's really hard to put into words. I mean, I'll never forget seeing an email when in the talks first started happening, and this is a bit before my wedding, and I'm looking at email, and it's literally I start tearing up, and my wife, or at the time fiance, was like, "Oh, are you excited for the wedding? That's cute." And I was like, "No, no, I think we're gonna open for the Dead in Mexico." And she's like, oh my god!" Like starts crying too. We're
Yeah.
both just like so happy, and it
So I
was
assume, did
pretty.
you get to meet the band when you were down there?
Um, no, we got to say what's up to Oteil, great guy. I said what up to.
That's sick.
I got to say what up to Mickey, which was awesome, and a little brief thing with Kreutzmann, but not Bob and John. Definitely not John. They were doing their thing, but we got to break in that main stage,
Yeah, I saw.
which was awesome. And
And
knowing that
and
Phish would be on that later, it was just so cool.
yes,
I was
and you all
standing
wore
at
the
Trey
jean shorts
spots.
for one of the nights too.
Oh yeah, so I made a big point of that. I was like, we got to do George. It'd be funny to troll Bob.
Yes,
I thought two things. Let's play because we have some Dead tunes in our repertoire. Me and my uncle, Love Light,
half step. I love the half
Mississippi,
step
One More
cover.
Saturday. Before the rain out, the first time on the main stage, we were set to do One More Saturday. But anyway, so we did those tunes, and also then the jorts. And I remember some people like Rick, like I don't have them, and I was like, oh, I brought like 3 pairs of jeans. Let's cut them up. And a couple. I think Peter was ready because Peter's always ready. That's just how he is.
Yeah,
And it was awesome. And it was really cool. I remember talking to Jerry's daughter Trixie, meeting her there, and phenomenal woman, and she thought it was super cool and whatnot, and funny, and it was just it was surreal. But the whole crowd was really digging it. Getty had lights. We had programmed to kind of be all over the resort because it was a pool set, but we him and I did lights for Circles Around the Sun late night, which was before ours at the same stage the night before.
hmm
So we were able to kind of set things up, and so we had lights going to like the surrounding 9 pool decks. So I mean, if
that's
you were
awesome.
within like even a quarter mile, maybe eighth of a mile, you could still hear it, and you're seeing light movers and stuff. So it was attracting people to it, and people were everywhere. It was a phenomenal experience.
That's awesome. Have you seen Phish in Mexico?
Yeah, I went the first 2 years they did it down in Mexico.
Nice.
I think the
16 and 17.
yeah the first year that Sunday was my 150th, I believe.
Oh, awesome. I
Oh
that's
no,
also on my bucket list to see them on the
excuse
beach.
me, 250th. The second Sunday of the second year of it was my 250th. Yeah, that was a fun
Whew.
run. That was a fun run. That was
Yeah, I
awesome.
mean, in the last 2 years, the runs they've played there have been
Oh, I
phenomenal.
listened to him. I was like, damn, whoever last year, people who were in Mexico, I just real envious. He's phenomenal fish. But that's what's awesome about it. When you're not there, you see stuff you want to be at, and you're like, oh man, they got me
Yeah.
hooked.
So, when you guys are, I mean, I know you guys were on Goose tour last February when Phish was playing, but did you guys like listen? Do you guys like listen to the shows in the van?
Um, Not all the time, just because we're doing stuff between remixing shows as we're driving,
Oh
actually
wow.
driving the vans, ourselves, Trevor driving or me driving, and or being co-pilot, people working and stuff like that, and Ben, watching Netflix and doing his thing, and but one specifically, I remember we were driving back and we put on that Alpine Ruby Waves show,
Oh
and we just happened to listen to it, and I was like, oh my god, Olivia's pool. I was like, this is phenomenal. I was like, let's keep this rolling. That was like Peter and I were loving it. Trevor, we were all loving it, man. It was a fun night.
yeah.
And there's other times where like I'm definitely pulling up set lists and seeing stuff like that, and just checking out what's going on. Or like for example, the show The Ghost You picked out. I remember having streamed that show because we were home between shows and whatnot, and I remember just throwing that on. So on the road, we do listen to some Fish, not as much. Like we listen to it on the iPod. Bringing it in live is tough sometimes to time up, but
hmm
that and the Met show. I know we were driving. We had some shows, and when they played at the Met, we were listening to that. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool. Like, watching you guys on stage together and watching you like during bingo tour, watching you in the room with them and calling out the balls and like, like you were like basically running around like on the quote unquote stage the whole time as they were playing. And I just remember it was really fun watching you like dance with the five of them and stuff. It was
I
just
mean,
cool.
it's they're my best friends in the world, and always knew this could happen from the night I told Rick, we got to get this band going. And I told Trevor that we're gonna make it happen. Don't worry. And that's a vision I had, and dancing to them when they're playing some of the best music, it's so good. And honestly, the jams I'm hearing right now are some of the best. It's just been satisfying my soul. I mean, me not seeing Phish all the time for the last few years, normally I'd have an itch that I wouldn't be able to scratch. Like, that gap between '04 and '09, there was a lot of itching to scratch I couldn't find.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. And the boys definitely, especially as they progress and evolve every single night since 17, 18, have given me that itch. They've scratched that itch for me. They do great, and they're getting to be more and more adult, as I call them. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys sound like grown-ups. You guys sound like adults finally, and but I'm
Yeah.
just fucking with them. But yeah, it's fun getting involved and dancing with them. That bingo tour was a cool concept we had an idea of just while we are on the road spitballing about what we could do for a live show once. And let's pull bingo balls, and you know let's have fans be able to be interactive. I'll pull the ball, show it to you guys,
Get involved.
and yeah, something we always I used to say. And it's cool that we were able to bring that concept to streaming, because as amazing as streams are, for me, it just feels they just always felt a little disconnected than the real show. It's great, you can use
Right.
your own bathroom, get your own food, use your own bong, do whatever, but you got your buddy calling you on the phone, you got your roommate talking to your dogs, you got to go out something.
Right.
So I feel
Exactly.
like a concert to me is my religion. It's a place where I can go escape for 3-4 hours and forget about the problems going on in my life or in the world, and just really get submerged into that for a few hours. That's kind of my thing. Another reason why I love 2.0, there was just little blocks phones. Nobody was on the phone all the time, and it
Right.
was different. But the way we were able to make that bingo tour interactive, felt a little more right, because we didn't know what was coming next, and people didn't know. So if had gotten involved, you're like, you feel involved, you feel connected, you felt more of that, like, I gotta pay attention vibe. And
Right.
I feel like it was more than just your typical stream, which I was very proud to be involved with. And just love our team for the creativity, and more so having the visions and making them happen, put them to fruition, which is, it's harder.
Absolutely. And from my point of view as well, for bingo tour, that was my first real deep dive into the band. I'd listened to like a few songs from a few different shows before, and I was kind of going with like, Hot Tea,
Were you
which
watching
remains
that
my
like
favorite
as it
songs.
was unfolding?
So yes, I did watch
Oh,
Bingo Tour.
wow, that's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
So that was my first, I was like, in the weeks leading up to it, I was like, am I going to watch this? I don't know. And then I was like, okay, like, I'm going to watch this. Like, what else am I going to do? So I got the thing, and I was very frustrated by the fact that I didn't win bingo.
Yeah.
I think it was night 3 where I hit a ton of balls, but they were all over the place.
All of the board,
And
right?
and night 3 screwed my chances of winning on night 4.
I mean, the balls don't lie, dude. They were
Well,
coming
I
out
remember I
true.
was listening to the Jam Base podcast with Rick and Peter from a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying like after night 1, people were like, "Oh, like maybe they've rigged it." Like so, it does come up like
They
with a
thought it was
coherent
all
set list,
rigged, yeah, but it
and then night
wasn't.
2 happened.
Boom, night two, and it's like, whoa, like you think we want to be
Reprise
doing
the
this,
opener.
like
Yeah,
you can't make that shit up. You know what I mean? To quote my friend Marshall Branch, you cannot make that shit up. So
yeah.
it
And
was really
what?
cool. What did you going back to my point about a festival kind of or streaming not being as similar to a real concert event? And since you saw Bingo Tour, how'd you feel of it? Like, were you waking up every day like, I'm gonna watch it at this time, I'm stoked, like similar to like?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
was like in June. I was like I got another Goose show tonight, and I was like,
Yeah.
and by
Okay.
the first night, it was really. I mean, the first night in the first set was that crazy drive,
Nuts.
which I loved. Which the take a lap jam was crazy. Um, but that jam was when it like clicked for me. I was like, oh, like this band.
Yeah.
And so I woke up the next morning. I was like, all right, I'm ready for night 2. One thing I did want to, from Bingo Tour that really stuck out to me was most bands, when they play a rotation jam, it's kind of like a shtick, and it's like kind of like, haha, it sounds bad because they're all playing different instruments. But the rotation jam from Bingo Tour is so good.
Money, baby.
It's
Shmoney.
so good.
Yeah, right? It was nice.
Now, I do think that's partially due to Spud's kind of cheating and going to percussion.
Right, and I'm call him out, let him know, let Spud know, like, take a chance. He, hop on keyboard. You played keyboard when you were 3 or 4. It was your first instrument, but
Yeah.
partially, but also let's not forget, my man Rick was a drummer as well, and
Yeah.
he can hit him pretty well, but
Absolutely. And listening to
Deanie on bass, really
I was about to say,
holding it down because he played bass for Great Blue, and then Trevor finding that lick and them kind of just getting going was real cool. But going back to our boys with have you seen a Alpharetta live by chance?
I have not.
I'll
I've
never.
seen the song, and Page on drums, man.
I mean, it's a great song. They pull it off. It's in the
Yeah.
funny Phish way. And Mike, Trev reminded me of Mike. Seeing him rip those solos. And I mean, shit. Speaking about it, I remember going to hang out with Peter Weeks, Trevor's older brother. That's how I know Trev, and such good friends. And I walk into their house one day and I hear, I think it was the Waves, and I'm like, that's from it. And I walk up to the guest room, and it's Trevor and a bunch of my younger friends now from Wilton that I had known, and they're watching. I'm like, how'd you get this footage? And they're like, it's a DVD, man. And I didn't even realize it on DVD. So that's like kind of a big time when Trevor and I clicked, was seeing that It
Bonding
DVD.
over It, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. He was like, did you go? I was like, yeah, that's definitely it. But that was cool, man.
Yeah, I remember with the rotation jam and Handini on bass. I had listened to on re-listen. There was like a bootleg version of Bingo Tour that was up there for the remainder of 2020, and I was listening to it. And I was like, this is sick. But then you get the remixed audio that came out last week.
Yeah,
which Peter does the mixing for it.
Yeah, Peter's mixing in post. I mean, Sam Bardani is mixing live and doing some phenomenal stuff. So everything comes out pretty top notch, and then
everything sounds phenomenal.
Peter goes in post and touches things up and does what he does, and he's that's why he's the whiz kid, aka Handini, because he just makes it happen.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I wanted to say his bass lines in that rotation jam are ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
ridiculous.
It set the tone for Trevor doing that little solo, and it was so fun. I mean, I was most excited. That was one of the balls I was most excited for when we were coming up with ball ideas, and I was just like, I want to hear what these guys do, and they were stoked for it too. That's the thing. Going back to why I love Phish so much, and why so many of us love Phish so much, is taking chances where we get these awesome jams, and we were just having fun, man. And the boys weren't afraid to just take a chance and lean into it. And I mean, you should do that with everything in life almost, but especially when you're playing music.
It's really cool. I think that's a phenomenal place to wrap up the episode. I just want to say thank you so much, Coach, for being on today. This was such a pleasure talking Phish and Goose and everything with you.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to talk about Phish with a fellow fan and just dive deep into the nerdiness that is us and what we love doing and why we do what we do, So thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of We Move Through Stormy Weather. Hope you enjoyed. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.